Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is working in full cooperation with the US in eliminating Hamas and ending the conflict in Gaza. He was speaking after meeting the US Secretary of State in what is Marco Rubio's first visit to the Middle East since his appointment. Secretary Rubio said the two countries shared a common position on Gaza as he reiterated President Trump's plan for the future of the region. He also highlighted the threat of Iran and promised the US would not allow Tehran to become a nuclear state. Mr. Netanyahu praised Donald Trump as the greatest US president Israel ever had and warned Hamas that Israel would, in his words, open the gates of hell if all hostages were not returned.
I want to assure everyone who's now listening to us, President Trump and I are working in full cooperation and coordination between us. We have a common strategy, and we can't always share the details of this strategy with the public, including when the gates of hell will be opened, as they surely will if all our hostages are not released until the last one of them. Israel is determined to achieve all the war objectives we set after the horrific attack on October 7th, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. We will eliminate Hamas's military capability and its political rule in Gaza. We will bring all our hostages home, and we will ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. The unequivocal support of the United States on Gaza will help us achieve these objectives faster and set us on a path for a different future. Secretary Rubio and I discussed President Trump's bold vision for Gaza, for Gaza's future, how we can work together to ensure that that future becomes a reality.
Benjamin Netanyahu there. Well, the US Secretary of State stressed the importance that all Israeli hostages are returned home. He also highlighted the threat from Iran across the Middle East.
The common theme in all of these challenges is Iran. It is the single greatest source of instability in the region. Behind every terrorist group, behind every act of violence, behind every destabilizing activity, behind everything that threatens peace and stability for the millions of people who call this region home, is Iran. And by Iran, I mean the Ayatollahs. By Iran, I mean its regime. A regime who, by the way, its people don't support. The people of Iran are victims of that regime. And so I think it's important to constantly point that whether we talk about Hamas or we talk about Hezbollah or we talk about violence in the West Bank or we talk about destabilization in Syria or we talk about any of these issues, the militias in Iraq, they all have behind them one common theme: Iran. And that must be addressed. And there can never be a nuclear Iran. A nuclear Iran that could then hold itself immune from pressure and from action. That can never happen.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio there. Well, let's speak to our State Department correspondent, Tom Bateman. Tom, those words there, let's take first of all the praise for what is described as President Trump's bold vision for Gaza. It has, of course, been criticised. What is the latest in terms of what it might entail for Palestinians?
Well, as far as we know from Mr. Trump himself, who has doubled down on this proposal in recent days, is that what he has proposed is, in his words, the resettlement permanently of the entire population of Gaza into Egypt and Jordan or further afield, while the US would take possession of the Gaza Strip and rebuild it as a Mediterranean resort. He's called it the Riviera of the Middle East. Now, because of the clear sense of compulsion around this plan, it would be illegal under international law. It would be a clear breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which strictly prohibits the forcible transfer of people. It would be considered a war crime under that. And, nevertheless, we've heard Mr. Trump reiterate it. What we've heard from Mr. Rubio, not so much on this trip, but in the run-up to it, was perhaps a different emphasis on this particular proposal, because what he has said is that he believes this is the only proposal out there for the future of Gaza, and therefore it is up to Arab nations in the region to step forward and come up, he believes, with their own proposals, which they would therefore back with money and potentially with security forces to try to stabilise Gaza. And so I think what Mr. Rubio is trying to suggest is that this is some sort of maximalist negotiating position to try and push neighbouring Arab countries to come up with an alternative plan for the future governance of Gaza. It's worth saying that all of this is a distinctly different future for Gaza as is proposed under Mr. Trump. He has completely redrawn the way the US not only sees the entire conflict historically, but also the future of Gaza, because he has basically blown out of the water what the Biden administration had been hoping to get towards, and that would be at the end of the third phase of the current ceasefire and hostage release deal, that you would have Gaza run basically by moderate Palestinian forces, perhaps with Arab nations helping out, particularly when it comes to security forces. That future is now gone, and we are in a situation where the Americans are pushing something completely different and in effect laying an expectation on the Arab countries to sort of step in and come up with that. But really we do have this sort of strategic vacuum when it comes to any viable internationally backed future for the Gaza Strip.
Tom Bateman, our State Department correspondent, thank you.